3 weeks after the Black Dahlia was murdered, another woman was found dead in Los Angeles. She'd been beaten, left out in the open, and there was lipstick written across her body. And what was written made people believe that this murder could have been linked to the Black Dahlia murders just weeks before. On the surface, it looked like the same killer could have struck again. Same city, same moment in time, another woman dead, just left out in the open to be found. But the deeper you look at the evidence, the less clear it gets. So were the Black Dahlia and red lipstick murders actually linked? Or is this another theory that sounds strong until you actually dig into the evidence?
Murder, cults, kidnapping.
Where the trail goes cold, we keep digging.
This is Dead Ends.
So today we're looking at the theory that the murder of Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, was linked to the murder of Jeanne French, which came to be known as the red lipstick murders. So there is a belief that they were connected, possibly done by the same person. So Elizabeth Short was found murdered in LA in January 1947, and the case became pretty famous straight away. In the media, just absolutely ran with it. Her body had been mutilated, posed, and just left out in the open. The person who found her thought it was a mannequin, but it was actually, the closer they looked, the body of Elizabeth Short. And literally the media it turned into a frenzy. It became such a big case and remains such a big case because the killer was never found. And then, less than a month later, February 1947, Jeanne French was found murdered, also in LA. And again, it was a woman found outdoors, really brutal. Most importantly, there was lipstick written on her body that some people believe pointed to the Black Dahlia case. So really, we're going to look at three things. First, why people thought these murders were linked in the first place. Then, what actually supports the theory that these murders were linked. And third, where the theories start to fall apart. So, why did people think these murders were linked? The first thing is the timing. So, literally weeks apart, Elizabeth Short is found dead on 15th of January 1947, and Jeanne French is found on February the 10th. So, same city, weeks apart, two murders, bodies found out in the open, and really, really brutal. On its own, that was enough to make people pay attention. There was already sort of media hype and theories that there was like these serial killings, that women were being targeted. And so this just added to it. You've got both women found outdoors in open places where they were clearly going to be found that morning when people started going about their normal lives. And it just highlighted, it gives these cases that same public quality. It's not hidden, it's exposed, it feels deliberate, like the killer has left these bodies to be seen, to be found. And then, obviously, when we're looking at were they linked, the biggest detail was what was written on Jeanne French's body with lipstick. So there was a message written and it was signed with BD. So obviously at the time, people are looking at this and thinking, well, that must be Black Dahlia. This must be a reference to that. Maybe someone trying to hype up that murder and claim a name for themselves as a serial killer. They looked at this message BD and believe, right, okay, this could be the same person. And I think that's why this theory lasts. That's why it stayed so long. You've got the timing, weeks apart, the same city, bodies left out in the open, two women, similar stages in their life, not a million miles away in looks, and then you've got this clue written on the bodies, BD. It's starting to look pretty close. When you put it all together, it stops feeling like just two unsolved murders and starts looking, okay, maybe we've got a bit of a pattern. So what actually supports this theory? If we take the theory seriously, the thing that supported would be kind of this. So a killer murders Elizabeth Short, gets massive attention, like across the whole of the United States and beyond, and then kills again weeks later. And this time leaving just enough similarities and maybe even this written reference, BD, on the body to make sure that actually the police and the public are connecting these murders and knowing that this was me. This was the person who murdered the Black Dahlia. And I guess from a behavioural point of view, looking at the killer is not impossible. You know, the Black Dahlia murder was very theatrical. You have this body posed out, looks like a mannequin when it's found. It feels staged more than just a killing. It feels like a humiliation. Someone's in control. They've got this desire to shock the public and perhaps to make a name for themselves. The body wasn't hidden away, it's displayed. And some people suggest the killer wanted it to look like a piece of art. So you've got this really theatrical killing. So if the same person did kill these, it's not hard to imagine them leaning into that. Just wanting more attention, literally weeks apart, wanting the city to feel like actually we're not just dealing with a few murders, but actually a killer is out there. No one is safe. And really, that is kind of the strongest support for this theory, apart from the message. Not just that they were murdered, two women, because obviously alone that's not going to prove anything. Murders were happening all the time at this point in LA, and there wasn't much success in solving this kind of murder where it was a lone female. But the staging, the publicity, that was the unsettling thing. That was what made these crimes feel connected. These were theatrical in some ways, especially with the writing, with the staging of the Black Dahlia body. And then obviously you have the message in lipstick, which is where the red lipstick murder gets its name, which says BD, which is the biggest support. That is the thing which actually at the time people thought this is the Black Dahlia, leaving a message, trying to make this name. And so that is why the theory survives. And that is why people do still believe that actually this was sequential. This could have been the same person. And it's a possibility that this person might continue. But this is where it also starts to fall apart. This is where the problems begin, because there are similarities in the staging. There's the message, but actually those similarities do start to fall apart when you look at the details, when you look at the evidence. The Black Dahlia murder was pretty unusual. It was brutal, yes, but in a very specific way. It was very surgical. It was very planned. It was made to look like this artwork, people believe. It was really like specific, really tailored, someone taking time to make this look how they wanted. When you contrast that with Jeanne French's murder, which again, it was brutal, it was public, but it is much more savage. There's a much more emotional content and capacity from this murderer in the murder of Jeanne French. It's much more like someone was emotionally hurt by Jeanne and decided to murder her than someone is looking to make a name for themselves, is looking to create this artwork as they might have seen it. And I think that matters, because actually when you're looking at these evidence and trying to draw this as the same person, you've got to look at how they were done. And they were so different. Yes, there was similarities, time, place, but the actual content, the actual quality, the actual what was done was so different. They were both brutal, but they were not the same. And then the biggest issue, we have the BD message, which obviously the media are going to take and make an absolute frenzy out of. But many people argue that actually said PD and not BD. And they thought that could be a reference to the police department, to law enforcement. It could just be someone's initials. But that does take this theory and actually puts a massive spanner in the works, because if it's BD, right, yeah, that's serious. This is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a few weeks after, and we've got this BD. But if it's PD, there's no link. this is another killing. And we do know there were a lot of killings at this time. And at the time they did, lots of media labeled these as the werewolf murders, the werewolf strikes again. So before these killings, people have the idea that there is this murderer out there. But actually, when we look at the evidence, it just doesn't seem linked. It's a dangerous time when the police weren't solving these cases. There's a lot of emotion. It's after wars. And obviously that's going to lead to a lot of danger, especially for people alone, especially for women alone during this time. And actually, when you look at that evidence, yes, we have the brutality, the location, the time. They were so close together, but I don't think that's enough to confidently say it's the same killer. You know, the Black Dahlia case did start just swallowing everything around it. It just consumed the public at the time and now. It started consuming everyone's thoughts, the media, and it's easy to see that actually that can cast a shadow and people can start to draw conclusions, because actually the idea that there is a serial killer, even though it's horrific and would be absolutely scary for people, I think deep down people find that kind of exciting. People are reading these stories from the safety of their home and they are finding that exciting. And so we have these theories that start come about that they're linked, but are they? Does the evidence suggest so? Possibly not. So were they linked? Honestly, I think there's enough to see why people thought so. There's enough to see why people actually were in their minds linking these. We've got the timing, the setting, the staging, the theatrical elements, the lipstick writing, which could have been BD. But if we stay to the evidence, we look at actually the type of way these people were killed, how the murders were committed. We have one which is really specific, which is really calculated. We have one which seems more emotional. We have the discrepancy with, is this PD written on a body and not BD? And yes, it sounds like it would be exciting, especially looking back as people who are interested in true crime, but the evidence just, I don't think suggests it. They may have been linked, but there doesn't seem to be enough evidence to suggest that these are in fact linked. But what do you think? Do you think that Jeanne French and Elizabeth Short were murdered by the same person? Do you think that lipstick message was actually a real clue? Or have we just hyped these up? Are we just trying to see evidence where actually there is no evidence? Let us know what you think in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. We'd love to hear any details we've missed. There'll be loads we've missed, and we'd love to just learn more, hear from you, and just keep this conversation going. So if you've got this far, please hit like and subscribe. We'd love that. We talk about murder, kidnapping, cults, and we'd love to journey with you and for you to join us in those conversations. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Have a great week, and we'll see you at the next Dead End. Goodbye.